Keir Starmer just achieved something remarkably difficult in British politics. He held a party conference, delivered what his team described as a passionate speech, watched his potential rival self-destruct on stage, and still emerged trailing Nigel Farage in public opinion polls. The question isn't whether things went wrong, it's how they went this spectacularly wrong. Last week's Labour Party conference in Liverpool should have been a triumph. Starmer's inner circle was celebrating, cabinet members were exchanging congratulations, and the mood inside the hall suggested victory. Then the polling data arrived, and the British electorate delivered a verdict so devastating it left Labour reeling. The numbers tell a story of complete rejection. Weekend opinion polls revealed that voters who viewed the conference positively were outnumbered 2-1 by those calling it a disaster. This wasn't a marginal defeat or a close call. It was an unambiguous repudiation of everything Labour presented. But the truly alarming figures concern Starmer personally. His approval ratings now rank among the lowest of any British Prime Minister in modern history. The number that should terrify everyone at number 10. Nigel Farage leads Starmer as preferred Prime Minister, 31% to 26%. Consider what that means. Nigel Farage, a man repeatedly rejected by British voters in constituency after constituency, who has lost more elections than most politicians contest, is now more popular as a potential Prime Minister than the actual sitting Prime Minister. That's not just bad polling, that's a fundamental crisis of legitimacy. The conference delivered one moment that transformed bad news into absolute chaos. Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Manchester, arrived in Liverpool claiming Labour MPs were desperately urging him to launch a leadership challenge. It was staged as his big moment, his chance to position himself as the alternative to Starmer. Instead, he became a punchline. Cabinet members described him as getting out over his skis and said he'd blown himself up. By the conference's end, Burnham was forced into an embarrassing retreat, sheepishly declaring that Keir Starmer was actually the best person for the job after all. It was political suicide executed in public. Cabinet members were literally laughing about it. Burnham hyped up a challenge, threw his punch, and managed to knock himself unconscious before anyone else even moved. The episode would be comedic if it weren't so revealing about Labour's internal dynamics and the willingness of senior figures to openly question Starmer's leadership. What makes this situation truly extraordinary is the disconnect between perception and reality. While everyone inside the conference hall was celebrating what they believed was a successful event, the British public, watching from outside, reached the exact opposite conclusion. The gap between what Labour believes is happening and what voters actually think has become catastrophic. It's not a minor misalignment. It's a complete failure to understand how their actions and messages are being received by ordinary voters who will ultimately decide their fate. Starmer delivered what his aides called an unusually passionate speech, which is political speak for marginally less robotic than usual. He attacked Farage with the line that he would fight reform with every breath. Farage complained publicly, and Labour declared victory. This is the political equivalent of poking someone, hearing them say ouch, and declaring you've won the war. It's mistaking a minor reaction for a major victory, and it demonstrates how disconnected Labour's strategic thinking has become from electoral reality. They're celebrating tactical moments while losing the strategic war for public opinion. If you think things are difficult for Labour now, you're not paying attention to what's approaching. 3 major challenges are converging, each with the potential to inflict serious damage, and together they create an almost impossible situation for Starmer to navigate. First comes the deputy leadership contest between Bridget Phillipson and Lucy Powell. Both are from the north, both are Labour veterans, and both are so politically similar that distinguishing between them requires genuine effort. This isn't the legendary ideological battle of 1981. This is choosing between 2 nearly identical options. Lucy Powell is expected to win, but not because party members are inspired by her vision or excited about her leadership potential. She's winning because members want to deliver a message to Starmer. It's a protest vote disguised as a leadership election. Labour members would rather kick their own Prime Minister than support him. That tells you everything about the party's mood and the fragility of Starmer's position within his own movement. 1 month after the deputy leadership result comes Rachel Reeves's budget. This is where Labour's situation transforms from merely difficult to genuinely impossible. Cabinet members have stopped denying that more tax rises are coming. The pretense has ended. The only questions now are which taxes will increase, and by how much, and whether any configuration can avoid complete political disaster. Some strategists argue that the lesson from the first budget is clear. Targeting specific sectors creates angry, vocal opposition from farmers, business owners, and other organised groups who have the resources and motivation to make serious political noise. Their solution? Go broad. Spread the pain across everyone so no single group can mobilise effective resistance. One advisor is reportedly pushing to raise VAT because governments usually get away with that, possibly the most cynical approach to taxation you'll hear this year. The strategy is to implement the unpopular measure people hate but might not riot over. It's governance by calculation of minimum resistance rather than any coherent economic philosophy. Other proposals include cutting national insurance while raising income tax by an equivalent amount, a stealth tax on pensioners that would directly break Labour's manifesto pledge not to raise taxes on working people. Every option is either politically toxic or manifesto breaking. One minister called raising income tax, or VAT, electoral suicide, adding that Labour would never recover from it. This is Nick Clegg's tuition fees debacle on steroids, a moment that could define and destroy Labour's credibility for years. Reeves faces an impossible trap. She needs to raise tens of billions of pounds to fund government commitments and fix the fiscal situation Labour inherited. Every available path leads straight off a cliff. Choose tax rises that break manifesto promises and lose credibility. Choose spending cuts and abandon the public services Labour promised to protect. There are no good options, only varying degrees of political damage. Then in May comes the real test, and early polling should have Labour in a full panic mode. Labour is currently polling in third place in both Scotland and Wales. Third, behind Reform on the right and the Nationalists on the left. These aren't marginal positions that could shift with a good campaign. These are fundamental indicators of Labour's collapse in territories they once dominated. Losing Scotland to the SNP would be embarrassing but expected, given recent history and the long decline of Scottish Labour. But losing Wales, where Labour has governed continuously since the Sened's creation, would be catastrophic. That's not hyperbole. That's a genuine existential crisis for the party. Imagine being in government at Westminster while losing your historic stronghold in Wales, the bedrock of Labour's identity and the foundation of its claim to represent working-class Britain. That's the kind of result that ends political careers and triggers immediate leadership challenges. It would represent a complete collapse of Labour's traditional support base and call into question the party's entire reason for existence. The most revealing moment came when a loyalist cabinet member was asked whether voters are too disillusioned to listen to Labour's message anymore. The minister's response: "They're not listening right now, to be honest." Let that sink in. A cabinet member, someone whose entire career depends on this government succeeding, just admitted that voters have completely tuned out. Labour can broadcast all the carefully crafted messages they want, deploy all their communications resources, and coordinate all their media appearances. Nobody is receiving them. They're shouting into a void and wondering why the void isn't applauding back. It's a fundamental breakdown of political communication, and it's being acknowledged by people at the heart of government who should be most invested in denying the problem. Despite Andy Burnham's disastrous attempt at kingmaking, his core diagnosis has found sympathisers within Labour. One veteran strategist acknowledged that Burnham put into play the thought of a leadership change. Translation: what was previously unthinkable is now being discussed in private conversations across the parliamentary party. Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, earned respect for honesty when she said, "You shouldn't believe anyone in politics who says they're not ambitious about the top job because they're basically lying." She's absolutely right. Every politician has entertained thoughts of becoming Prime Minister, even if only briefly. The relevant question is who's positioning themselves now for a potential leadership contest, and who has the credibility to mount a serious challenge. Mahmood herself gets mentioned in these discussions. So does Wes Streeting, widely described as the government's most fluent communicator and someone with the media skills Starmer lacks. Labour MPs are already measuring up potential replacements, quietly assessing who might step in if the current situation continues deteriorating. The question isn't whether people are thinking about alternatives, it's whether anyone has the courage to move first. Starmer's fundamental problem is that everything is converging simultaneously. A deputy leadership contest designed to humiliate him, a budget requiring either broken promises or impossible cuts, critical elections that could trigger party-wide panic, and underlying all of it, an electorate that has stopped listening entirely. It's like juggling while people throw more balls at you and the floor is on fire. Eventually, something drops, and when it drops, the consequences will be severe. The Andy Burnham episode, despite its farcical execution, revealed something crucial. There are people inside Labour willing to openly consider that Starmer might not be the answer to their electoral problems. Burnham's execution was amateur from start to finish, but the fact he felt confident enough to even float the idea means discontent is bubbling under the surface that Number 10 doesn't want to acknowledge. When leadership challenges start being discussed, even incompetently, the current leader's position isn't as secure as it appears from the outside. Looking at the political calendar, it's genuinely difficult to identify where this situation improves for Starmer. The deputy leadership result will be interpreted as rejection. The budget will break promises or demand miracles. The May elections could deliver historic defeats. And beneath everything, the fundamental problem persists. Voters aren't listening. You can craft the best message in the world, develop the most sophisticated policy platform, and deploy the most talented communications team. But if your audience has already changed the channel, you're just talking to yourself in an empty room. So here's the question nobody in Labour wants to confront. Does Keir Starmer make it to the next general election as Labour leader? Right now, that's looking less like a certainty and more like an open question. The answer depends entirely on the next few months, the budget outcome, the election results, and whether Labour can somehow figure out how to reconnect with voters who have demonstrably tuned them out. The situation facing Starmer isn't just challenging, it's potentially terminal. He's lost control of the narrative, lost the confidence of significant portions of his party, and most critically, lost the attention of the British public. Recovering from one of those would be difficult. Recovering from all three simultaneously might be impossible. The next few months will determine whether Keir Starmer survives as Prime Minister or becomes another cautionary tale about how quickly political fortunes can collapse in modern British politics.